just want to give a hat tip to our friends over at The Motley Fool. Thanks for sponsoring this video. If you're looking for the 10 best stocks to buy right now, go to my link, fool.com/the smattering. Put in some information. You'll get a special report with the 10 best stocks to buy right now. And just like that, Disney has absolutely shocked the investing world. Bob Chapek is out. Bob Iger coming back from retirement to lead the company again for at least the next 2 years. I'm Jason Hall. This is The Smattering. If you're watching this video, you're probably trying to figure out, is this time to buy? Maybe investors are thinking, maybe we're going to get a pop here and it's time to sell because Disney's got some structural problems that Iger's not going to be able to fix in the next 2 years. Well, we're going to break that down. But before we do, what's the thesis for Disney? Let's start there. So it starts with just simple stuff. Like right here, you see on my shirt there, you got Han Solo peeking out. You've got this old Disney cap. You've got this character from Frozen. What are all of these things? These are things that transcend generation. This was my grandfather's cap that my father gave to me. It's older than I am. I bought this shirt when I was a kid, and these are things that my kid is buying today. Disney has intellectual property that not just transcends generations, but generations grow up with and live with these things and are engaged with these products over their entire lifetime. And Disney's able to monetize it over that lifetime and then do it again with every generation after that. That is an amazingly powerful business model. Okay, what went wrong? Bob Chapek came in. We're talking about somebody who replaced, in a lot of ways, Bob Iger is almost Disney's Steve Jobs. Okay, so again, of course, Steve Jobs sadly passed away. Iger chose to retire. Steve Jobs is a founder. Now, obviously, Disney was founded by Walt Disney. Bob Iger made the Disney that exists today. You think about the acquisitions of Marvel, Pixar, the Fox acquisition, the strategy of continuing to grow that powerful intellectual property that can be monetized in the movie studios, the streaming networks now, the TV stations, the theme parks, the apparel, the toys, all of those things. That's very much Bob Iger's vision, and he created that a business that exists today. Of course, Steve Jobs sadly died, was replaced by Tim Cook, a longtime lieutenant, deeply knowledgeable about the business, an operations wizard, continued to lead Apple to these incredible, incredible heights that we've seen it attain under his leadership. The idea was Bob Chapek would be the same thing. 27 years with the company, very steeped in the corporate culture, very steeped in solid operations. You can't run the company's biggest business with its most employees like you do in the theme parks business without being really good at operations. What happened? The pandemic happened. The challenges in Florida with some legislation there that a lot of its employees were not very pleased with the way that Chapek responded. The reality is Bob Iger was an incredible communicator. Maybe one of the most underappreciated skills for the CEO of a company like Disney. You can't just be a great operations guy, set the vision for the company, and then execute it and allocate capital well. You have to be able to communicate that vision, not just to investors, but you have to be able to communicate it to the wider public. The reality is that Bob Chapek was not Bob Iger in that regard. Is it fair to judge him against that? That's the standard to what he replaced. Okay. So that's the reality. That is the aspect of the business that I think he struggled with. And then you look at what's happened with earnings recently, disappointments, big losses have been mounting in the streaming business as they've tried to bring that to scale. Needless to say, the board went from, hey, we're going to give you your extension back in June to here we are not even 6 months later. I think there is one simple number that explains a tremendous amount of that, and that's stock price. This is the purple line here is Disney stock price. The yellow orange line, this is the S&P 500 since February of 2020 when Chapek came in as CEO. The stock price, like so many other companies, surged. A lot of this was being driven by the growth of Disney Plus and Hulu. Disney stock has absolutely unraveled. It is really below the 5-year low. Now, this includes a pop today from the announcement, and it's still, except for the lowest of the lows during the pandemic, we're basically knocking on lows right now. And that one number explains a tremendous amount of the board's decision to replace Bob Chapek. Because what does that stock price represent? It represents the perception of the investing public in Disney as a business today. And needless to say, that perception is absolutely at lows right now. That is the reality. That is an indictment of the board as much as it's an indictment of Bob Chapek. I think that is a fair statement. I think it is something as investors we have to be very thoughtful about, because at the end of the day, the CEO has all of those responsibilities. The board of directors' responsibility is to support the CEO. They're the ones that make the decisions behind the scenes. They're the ones that represent us as shareholders. Besides Susan Arnold, the chairperson who's been there since 2007, and one other member of the board that's been there since 2015, the entire rest of the board has turned over. I think a couple of things that Disney has done well is they've introduced a more diverse board in terms of people's backgrounds, but also careers, education experience, the industries that they work in. I think those are all positives. But the point is that this is a relatively young board in terms of working together. That's my concern with the company. For the board to be making this decision this suddenly, after just giving extension to Bob Chapek, are they going to be able to recapture what Bob Iger did in the 15 years that he led the company before he retired? That remains to be seen. It's going to be a very tough act to follow here, okay? The most important job that he has over the next 2 years is finding his replacement. Hopefully this resets the expectations for the market that you're not going to find another Iger. It's rare. You don't have a Hall of Famer that retires and then the kid that you bring up and put in that role is going to be a Hall of Famer too. Those sorts of CEOs are incredibly, incredibly rare. I hope Disney investors just kind of reset their expectations out of this. It's still a wonderful company. I'm certainly not selling, but I want more evidence that Iger's going to be able to find and groom his replacements before I think about this as a company that I'm ready to add more shares to.